Well, it's called for 1:30. It's 1:30 somewhat, so I think we should begin. Good afternoon and welcome to the opening session of AOHC 2013. This is ACOEM's 98th annual meeting. Remember, the 100th meeting will be in Chicago. Hope you all can join us. We are delighted to be back in Orlando, where we were 2 years ago. It's a great setting for our meeting, and as some of you may have heard, we've had a record turnout this year, and we thank you all for choosing to be part of AOHC. This year's scientific programs offer the usual and a superb, excellent mix of information and resources to enhance your practices and benefit those you serve. Before we begin this afternoon's proceedings, I'd like to ask that we have a moment of silence for those recently lost at Sandy Hook, where workers, teachers lost their lives, at Boston, the bombings where the police officers lost their lives in the overall problem, and the West Texas explosion where many workers lost their lives. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So we're beginning this meeting this year on Workers' Memorial Day. It's a fitting time for us to gather, and in keeping with the spirit of the day, I'd like to thank the hotel staff at Rose and Shingle Creek for all they do to make our meetings a success. Without them, it wouldn't happen, and our staff as well, of course. So let me now share a few important announcements and reminders. First, I wanted to encourage you to download the first ever AOHC app for your smartphone or device while you're here in Orlando. Links are available to the various materials here at the meeting, and they are also featured on one side of your hotel key for those of you staying here at the Rose and Shingle Creek. If you need help with this app, just visit our AOHC registration desk. It's a great tool that makes many resources available to you to navigate your way around the AOHC. As always, be sure to check out all of our new products and services offered through the membership services area this week. One example is our new e-store for ACOEM merchandise in partnership with Land's End. You can learn about this and much more by visiting our membership booth, which is right across the way at the moment. Please note that our update from NIOSH and OSHA, originally scheduled for Tuesday at 7 a.m., has been canceled. We have, however, had the pleasure of being able to replace that session with a new one that will feature former U.S. Assistant Surgeon General Dr. James Galloway. During the Tuesday session, Dr. Galloway will discuss the vital role of the private-public collaboration in developing healthier workplaces and communities, and we are encouraged that you attend, and it will be an outstanding presentation. On Monday at 2 p.m., there will be a special environmental briefing on the toxic tour of Lake Apoca, a visit by ACOEM members to learn more about the impact of toxic pesticides on local farm workers in the Orlando area. But if you're not able to attend the tour, there is going to be an excellent opportunity to get some of the details of this environmental story. There's going to be a briefing at 2 p.m. in the Kehoe Room 9. Please see ACOEM staff for more details. Monday night, we have a special treat planned. At 9:30, we will offer a free screening of a new documentary about treating post-traumatic stress syndrome in returning veterans. It's titled Not Yet Begun to Fight. This movie is about a novel approach to help veterans heal from PTSD. It's been well received in viewers where it's been shown, and one of the producers will actually be on hand to answer questions. Please join us for that special event tomorrow night at 9:30 in Sebastian K. Remember, this movie screens right after our Monday night social event, and we'll time it so you can get back here. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge again the fine work of our ACOEM education staff, whose efforts have earned accreditation with accommodation from ACCME. That accommodation recognizes organizations for superior compliance with all accreditation status. A lot of work went into that, and we're very proud of it. This is the highest level of accreditation offered by ACCME, and as a result, our accreditation will be extended out till 2018. So please join me in recognizing the ACOEM staff and, of course, our AOHC Planning Committee for all they do to make this a great event. I will now ask Drs. Phyllis Gerber and Michael Holland, who are co-chairs of this year's AOHC Planning Committee, to say a few words of welcome to Orlando.
Thank you very much, Dr. Auerbach, and thank you all for coming. We're excited to be here. We hope you have a great time here in Orlando at the Rose and Shingle Creek, as well as a great educational experience at the conference. We spent a lot of time with the Planning Committee trying to get the best possible program we could, and we think we succeeded, so we hope you like it. And you have something about a proclamation?
Well, we were lucky enough to get a proclamation from the mayor of the county of Orange here in the Orlando area. And so we have the proclamation here, and as a result of this proclamation, Sunday, April 28th, 2013, has been proclaimed to be AOHC 2013 Day. So we're very proud of it. And it will be on display, and congratulations to all the participants in this conference because you made it possible. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last thing.
Thank you, doctors. I'll ask Phyllis to remain on the stage. Well, I'll ask Mike to remain on the stage with me for a moment. Get back up here. Nice try. I want to personally thank you for all your work this year.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And without the dedication and hard work of you and your planning committee, this meeting would not have been possible. So let me take a moment to recognize the entire committee. Please hold your applause until I've read all the names. In addition to Dr. Gerber and Dr. Holland, who served as chairs of the planning committee, the committee was comprised of Tony Allman, Rahila Andrews, Robert Bourgeois, Karen Carlson, Roxana Dibbs, Stanley Hames, Patrick Larrabee, Judith McKenzie, Verba Moore, Richard Johnson, Tanisha Taylor, and Michael Webb. Serving on the advisory panel with me were Ron Lepke and Paul Papanak. Many thanks to everyone who worked so hard in planning this year's AOHC. Phyllis and Mike, being the co-chairs of the Planning Committee, requires organization, commitment, and time. We appreciate all that you did in leading the committee this year, including your strong creative thinking and your enthusiasm. You did a great job, and we want to recognize those efforts with these awards. This reads, presented to Phyllis A. Gerber, M.D., FAADEP, MRO, FACOEM, in recognition of your leadership, vision, and creativity as co-chair of the 2013 AOHC Program Planning Committee, April 28, 2013. Michael G. Holland, presented FACOEM, FAACT, FACMT, FACEP, in recognition of your leadership, vision, and creativity as co-chair of the 2013 AOHC Program Planning Committee. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
All right, we're going to begin our additional awards with the presentation of the annual Corporate Health Achievement Award, which recognizes organizations with outstanding employee health and occupational and environmental health medicine practices. The recipients of this year's award has undergone a rigorous review by an expert panel to assess 4 categories: leadership, management, healthy workers, healthy environment, and healthy organization. I am delighted to announce that this year's CHAA recipient is American Express. American Express is being honored with the prestigious award for health and safety based on its overall success in delivering effective tools that foster a safe and healthy environment and encourage employee engagement and pride in the company. The CHA Award Committee was particularly impressed with the American Express Healthy Living Global Wellness Program, which features best-in-class resources, enhanced access to care, and a very supportive network environment for all employees and their families. The program's goals are to improve employee health, business productivity, and performance, and to control long-term health and productivity costs. Additionally, American Express was singled out for its integrated data warehouse, which allows for ongoing research and analysis to assure that offerings are consistent with employee needs. American Express reflects a company leadership that understands and is responsive to the health and safety of its workforce. The depth of the program offered by American Express for employees and the focus on safety and prevention of workplace injuries embodies the principles of the CHA program. Joining us today to accept this award are Dr. Wayne Burton, who is American Express Global Corporate Medical Director, Karen DiProfio, Director of Nursing, and Daniel May, Corporate Safety Manager. They are all here.
Thanks very much. On behalf of American Express and our 60,000 employees around the world, we're deeply honored to receive this award. And 3 years ago, when I joined American Express, it was clearly one of our goals. We have a great team that works very hard to do this, and we started this pathway to receive this award over about a year ago now. And we want to thank you very much, thank the college and the Corporate Health Achievement Award Committee and examiners. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burton, and again, our congratulations to American Express. And as a reminder, you can learn more about the programs American Express has implemented at Session 109 at 3:15 today in Sebastian L4, immediately following the conclusion of this general session. When we do awards, we have so many good candidates that it is always difficult to pick. But I think the awards committee has picked the best of the best this year. And I appreciate the efforts of the awards committee in doing this, as well as the individual awardees. So next we have the presentation of our Global Leadership in Corporate Health Award, which is co-sponsored by the National Business Group on Health and ACOEM. This award honors the achievement of individuals who demonstrate excellence in leadership and in implementing programs that improve health and productivity of the workforce. The recipient this year is Dr. Kathy Bassey. Dr. Bassey was recognized for her long-standing contributions to the field of health and productivity on a global basis. She has driven a global program at Dow that includes detailed metrics and continuous health improvement, and is regarded as one of the nation's experts in workplace health. Her long-standing leadership and vision have clearly advanced the field of health and productivity around this globe. We honor Dr. Bassey for her valuable and lasting contributions to our profession. Dr. Bassey is unable to be with us today, but she will be, she was honored at a recent meeting of the National Business Group on Health. Please join me in recognizing the achievements of Dr. Bassey.
Here's the award.
Okay, that's not it. It's, all right, back to awards. One of the privileges of serving as your president is the honor of presenting ACOEM's 5 annual awards. The first award that we're going to present is the Adolph Kammer Merit and Authorship Award, which recognizes the most outstanding article published in the College Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine during a given year. This award is presented in honor of Dr. Adolph Kammer, the first editor of the JOEM. This year, the award is presented to Dr. Ronald F. Teichman. Dr. Teichman is recognized for his outstanding contribution as the guest editor of the special issue on health effects of deployment to Afghanistan and Iraq. This issue of JOEM, published last June, featured 16 articles that focused on the wide range of hazards and concerns of returning veterans. It was the first major compilation of scientific studies devoted to health and exposure issues faced by veterans who are returning from some of the most current conflicts that we have engaged in. Dr. Teichman, thank you for your contribution. I am pleased to present this award. It reads, the Adolph Kammer Merit in Authorship Award, presented to Ronald F. Teichman, MD, MPH, Fellow, American College of Occupational Medicine, for his guest editor of Health Effects of Deployment to Afghanistan and Iraq, special issue JOEM 2012, given here in Orlando, Florida, on April 28, 2013.
Thank you, Carl. I'm told I have 1 minute to speak, which is tough when I have over 1 million people to thank, even more so for me, since most of you who know me know that I can't say hello in less than 10 minutes. But I'll do my best. I want to start by thanking the JOEM board and the ACOEM board for giving me this award. Thank you to my authors, the lead authors on the 16 papers, as well as their co-authors. Thank you to the editorial staff of JOEM, including Marjorie and Christine, to my friend and mentor of over 25 years, Paul Grundy, to my blushing bride of over 27 years, Susan Teichman, and most importantly, to the hundreds of thousands of men and women who have voluntarily risked life and limb to defend our freedoms, to defend us so that we can meet here today, so that we can come and go as we choose, and so that we can live the way we want to live. Would those of you in the audience who are either veterans or still active duty please stand? Thank you very much. This award is actually for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teichman, for your very appropriate remarks. Our next award is the Health Achievement and Occupational Medicine Award. Created in 1948, this award recognizes an ACOEM member for a specific, unique achievement in occupational and environmental medicine. I am pleased to announce that this year's recipient is Dr. Mary G. Townsend. Dr. Townsend, please come up. Dr. Townsend is being recognized for her contributions in the field of spirometry, particularly as author of the seminal scientific papers on spirometry and respiratory surveillance. These are significant contributions to the scientific literature, which summarizes advances of particular relevance to the occupational health practice. Dr. Townsend is also honored for her educational achievement in the field, as exemplified by her spirometry training programs and for her work on the pulmonary panel for ACOEM's occupational medicine practice guidelines. And as you are aware, OSHA has recently published recommendations regarding spirometry testing in that publication. OSHA specifically cited Dr. Townsend and ACOEM for assistance in the preparation of the guidance. Dr. Townsend, I'm pleased to present you this award. It reads, the Health Achievement in Occupational Medicine Award, presented to Mary C. Townsend, Dr. Ph., April 28, 2013, Orlando, Florida. Mary.
Thank you very much, Carl, and I'd like to thank ACOEM for this award. I was very, very pleased to hear that I was going to be given it this year. I would also like to thank my students and acknowledge them, as well as my consulting clients, for their ongoing perspectives that we discuss in courses and problems that are brought to bear on how spirometry is interpreted and is carried out in real-world situations. And it has made this field that I've been in a wonderful field for me, and I think for the students as well. And then finally, among all of the good professional people that I have worked with for both my consulting clients, academic, et cetera, university, government, I really would especially like to thank Dr. John Hankinson, who's been my mentor and support and collaborator for probably now 3 decades since he was my boss at NIOSH. Thank you very much for this award.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. Our next award is for meritorious service, recognizing an ACOEM member who has provided outstanding service to the college. This year's recipient is Dr. Douglas W. Martin. Dr. Martin has been chosen for the 2013 Meritorious Service Award for his contributions to ACOEM as Chair of the Medical Review Office Section, Chair of the Clinical Practice Committee, Secretary-Treasurer of the Private Practice Section, and Course Director for the Musculoskeletal Disease and Core Curriculum. In addition, ACOEM is recognizing his work at the Stay at Work, Return to Work Committee, presentation on the MRO controversies session, and active participation in the ACOEM's House of Delegates. Dr. Martin is also cited for his contributions and specialized knowledge in assisting ACOEM to receive the ACCMA accreditation with accommodation status that I mentioned earlier. Dr. Martin, I'm pleased to present you with the Meritorious Service Award. It reads, ACOEM Meritorious Service Award, presented to Douglas Martin, M.D., Fellow American College of Occupational Medicine, April 28, 2013, Orlando.
Thanks very much, Carl. I want to take an opportunity here to thank the awards committee, the board of directors. I'm humbled by receiving this award. Those of you in the audience probably remember when you graduated from medical school, you took something called a Hippocratic Oath, or something like the Hippocratic Oath. Everybody kind of remembers the most significant part about that, first do no harm, but there's another sentence in there that I've taken to heart. And that's the sentence that has to do that we pay homage to those that have come ahead of us, and we need to teach those that have come behind us. And I guess I've taken that a little bit close to heart. Those of you who know me well know that I come from a family of educators. My father was a superintendent of schools. My mom was a teacher. Several of my grandparents were educators. And they looked at me really funny when I told them I was going to go to medical school. But I reminded them that part of being a doctor is being a teacher. And they were okay with that. So it's kind of an important thing. So I want to thank you for educating me in the past. When I came to this organization in the early 1990s, I didn't know a dang thing. And you taught me. And now it's my opportunity to try to teach those behind me. So I take that to task, and I welcome the challenge. The other thing that I do want to mention is this ACCME process. If you've never been through the ACCME process for reaccreditation, which, by the way, that's the organization that grants the college the ability to give you CME credit. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like you have to prove that your dog's a dog to those who really think it's a cat. That's not an easy process. The staff knows what I'm talking about. They're in the back nodding their heads. So it's not an easy process, but I think the college really does have a lot to be proud of in that realm. So I want to thank you again for this award.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Our next award is named for Dr. Robert Kehoe, who is a past president of ACOEM and a pioneer in occupational and environmental medicine. This achievement award is presented to an individual who has made significant contributions to academic excellence or research in the disciplines of occupational medicine, environmental, and/or environmental health. I'm delighted to announce that this year's 2013 Kehoe Award for Excellence in Education and Research in Occupational and Environmental Medicine is presented to Dr. Stefanos N. Kales. Dr. Kales receives the 2013 Kehoe Award for his lifetime contributions as an editor and researcher, which includes programs he developed to improve firefighter fitness, particularly in the area of cardiopulmonary fitness. He's being recognized for his work in the field of sleep medicine and for his major contribution in OEM toxicology, as evidenced by his numerous scientific peer-reviewed articles. As director of Harvard's OEM residency, Dr. Kales is also being honored for developing new approaches for training residents in health and productivity and disability prevention, and for motivating them to pursue wide ranges of research projects. For all he has contributed to our profession, Dr. Kales is truly a deserving recipient of this award. My apologies. I'm having a Rubio moment, I think. Dr. Kales, I'm so pleased to present this award to you. Let me read it. Kehoe Award for Excellence in Education and Research in OEM presented to Stefanos N. Kales, MD, MPH, Fellow at the College of Occupational Medicine, April 28, 2013, Orlando.
Thank you so much, Carl. I really want to thank ACOEM for this prestigious award. It's truly an honor given the many achievements of Dr. Robert Kehoe, as well as those of the very highly distinguished group of previous recipients of the Kehoe Award. It's so humbling to be a member of that group. I want to thank all of the students, all of the residents, all the trainees, all of my colleagues and mentors, many of whom you are here today at Harvard, at NECOM, throughout ACOEM and elsewhere, for your support and collaboration. I'm deeply indebted to the fire service, law enforcement, and all of the emergency responders who have embraced our team's research. I want to thank my wonderful family, my parents, Drs. Anthony and Joyce Kales, my wonderful wife, Anna, my daughters, Stefania and Ariana. I'm truly blessed by you all. Lastly, I want to recognize my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Edward Leitao. He was my first medical director after I graduated from residency and fellowship. You were so instrumental in my early career. Thank you, brother. I want to congratulate all the awardees. I want to congratulate the organizers of the conference, the co-chairs, and their planning committee. It's an excellent meeting. Thank you all for this honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Kales. Our final award is the college's most prestigious award, the Knutson Lifetime Achievement in OEM Award. This award was established in 1938 by Mr. Knutson, who was then president of General Motors. This award is the highest honor in occupational and environmental medicine. It recognizes an individual who has led a distinguished career in one or more disciplines of occupational medicine, environmental health, or environmental medicine. This year, it is my great privilege to announce that the 2013 Knutson Award goes to Dr. T.L. Giadotti. Dr. Gadati is being recognized for his leadership, exemplified by his outstanding lifetime service to our profession, culminating in his presidency of ACOEM and his commitment to preserving ACOEM and OEM history, and his 30 years in academics as professor, clinical department chief, chair, and institute director. These all reflect his dedication to the college and to the specialty. This is also being commended for his sole single authorship of a 3-volume Prager Handbook of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, which is a massive achievement that was published in 2010. For all this and more, we honor Dr. T. Gadati. Dr. Gadati, would you come forward and accept this award? This reads the Knudsen Lifetime Achievement in OEM Award presented to T.L. Gadati, MD, MPH, Fellow, American College of Occupational Medicine, April 28, 2013.
Thank you. I can pull my notes out here. Time does not permit me to name all of the people who deserve acknowledgement, but I would like to single out someone who really helped me in my career, and that person is you. Ever since I first became involved and attended my first meeting of this organization in 1974, the members of ACOEM have encouraged and supported my work. You chose me to be your president for 2006, and all of us together working, you have built a modern, evidence-based, and forward-looking specialty and field of medical practice that we can now be proud of. Thank you for recognizing my own small effort to contribute to this achievement, which is really your achievement. And thank you for this wonderful award.
Thank you, T. I would now like to acknowledge the winners of the Resident Research Presentation Awards. In keeping with our mission to stimulate research, the ACOEM residents and recent graduate sections and the academic session conduct a competition each year to encourage young researchers to share their ideas. Doctors, as we call your name, if you're present, please stand up. Please hold your applause until I've read all the names. Winners of this year's Residence Research Award are Jorge Benitez from Meharry Medical College, Roxana Debif from the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center, Margaretha Hasek from Meharry, Kevin Johnson from Harvard School of Public Health, Numeka Odo from the University of Minnesota School of Public Health, Vivian Noon Quo from Meharry College, Peplea Ray from the Uniformed Services University of Health Service, and Dennis Tehan, Jr. from Harvard School of Public Health. Congratulations, doctors. So please show your support for our young colleagues by attending sessions 211 tomorrow morning at 8:30, where these investigators will be presenting their research. So this concludes the award segment of our program. Let's hear a round of applause for all of our honored colleagues. Well, I now have the honor of introducing our speaker for the 60th Annual Sappington Memorial Lecture. This lecture, which has been presented at AOHC since 1954, honors the memory of Dr. Clarence Old Sappington, the first American to hold a Doctorate of Public Health degree. The lecture serves as a forum from which to address major issues in the field of occupational medicine. This year we are honored to have our speaker as Dr. Paul Grundy, who is Director of Wellbeing Services at IBM, Global Director of Wellbeing Services, and also a Fellow of ACOEM. Dr. Grundy is the Global Director for Healthcare Transformation and President of the Patient-Centered Primary Care Collaborative. He's also known as the godfather of the patient-centered medical home, a concept of managing a population that is now widely accepted and which comes out of his roots and training in occupational medicine. Dr. Grundy is an adjunct professor at the University of Utah Department of Family and Preventive Medicine and a member of the Institute of Medicine and the IBM Industry Academy. He previously served as the Corporate Occupational Medical Director for International SOS, which is the largest medical service company in the world. He's a retired Foreign Service officer from the U.S. Department of State, having attained the rank of Minister Consular, which is equivalent to a 2-star rank in the military. Dr. Grundy attended medical school at the University of California, San Francisco, earned his master's degree in public health at the University of California, Berkeley, and did his residency in preventive medicine at Johns Hopkins University. I should note that Dr. Grundy is a long-time member of ACOEM, first becoming involved when he was a medical student in 1974. Dr. Grundy is also the current recipient of the NCQA National Quality Award, which is a prestigious honor which is bestowed to Ted Kennedy in the past, Hillary Clinton in the past, and other nationally prominent leaders. We do have a short video about the award, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Grundy.
Paul Grundy of IBM. When Paul began his work on patient-centered medical home in the mid-2000s, the medical home concept was not new. But what Paul did is he really conducted nurture, which is why sometimes people refer to the doctor.
The medical home is a way of organizing primary care that integrates teamwork and information technology. The result is better care that is more personalized, less expensive than conventional care.
At the time, also the need for a leader, somebody who can inspire stakeholders from across the healthcare system, bring them together, and rally around the patient-centered medical home concept.
He has set a very big table for this consortium, and some of us are saying, you really have all of those players just to get a patient-centered medical home? And I think in retrospect, the answer was yes, and I think Paul was the person who understood that.
Dr. Grundy used his boundless energy and wide professional network to spread the word about medical homes' potential to improve primary care.
Paul shaped the patient-centered primary care collaborative, which is an organization now about 5 years in existence that has over 1,000 organizations as members representing virtually all parts of the healthcare system.
Dr. Grundy inspires people, but also pushes them to improve.
He is willing to take on difficult challenges in challenging the healthcare centers that are not the highest quality or not the most efficient in the use of their resources.
Paul has demonstrated courage time and time again by stepping up, taking the lead, and inspiring us to always remember and place the patient at the center of everything that we do.
I think Paul is kind of like a secret weapon.
Thank you very much. Such an honor to be with you today. On the 60th anniversary of this organization, I attended my first meeting at UCSF, and I've been a huge fan ever since. The concepts, the principles, the thought process that, we're going to talk about today comes from standing on the shoulders of folks like Sappington and our wonderful teachers and our wonderful field. You see, we've finally arrived in some ways in that we've now reached a point of such pain in the area of the cost of delivery, in the area of the value proposition of delivery, that what we've been talking about for many, many years that you have to actually manage a population, and they can be managed, is really beginning to become clear to a broader set of folks, including a lot of the buyers of care now, in a much more global way. So if I could get my first slide up here, if that's possible. Thank you. So what we're really thinking about is how we begin to move away from buying an episode of care towards putting the basic infrastructure in place that allows us to have a system integrator, a place in the delivery system where accountability can occur and a plan can be designed for every patient in the system, right? So that's the shift in thought, away from an episode of care towards a system integration model of delivering care. That's the basic concept of the medical home. And, you know, when folks talk about accountable care, when they talk about this transformation that's happening, they talk about the triple aim, right? They talk about the stuff that Borwick talks about. But we in occupational medicine think of it as the quadruple aim. We think about that fourth arm of this, which for us is productivity. For the military, it's readiness. They also call it a quadruple aim. For us in health, in occupational medicine, it's really about productivity, because we understand that the total cost of care, you know, is really about all of that, right? Because actually 60% of our cost isn't actually the cost of buying the care, which, by the way, is terribly broken and we'll talk about today, but it's also about productivity. So the buyers are finally starting to react to this sign that we see on the freeway everywhere we go, and it markets an episode of care, right? We do the best heart surgery. You know, we are finally beginning to understand that that's not what we want to buy. What we want to buy is a delivery system that says to us, we manage our population so well that you're going to have 1/3 less need to do heart surgery. And when you do have heart surgery, yes, we do the best, right? That's fine. But somebody's actually looking at managing the ABCs, the aspirin, blood pressure, and cholesterol, and therefore we have 1/3 less need to do heart surgery. And by the way, you know, we're not doubling the number of folks we're doing stents on, even if they don't need heart surgery, because we're no longer being paid to do that, right? So that's the transformation that's happening rapidly all over the country and all over the world. So about 7 or 8 years ago, in fact, I'll start even earlier. 13 years ago, I was working for International SOS in Singapore, and I moved to my new job with IBM. I brought my cat Dada with me home from Singapore, and you know, my cat went through the quarantine process. And about a month after we arrived, the vet that ran the quarantine process sent my cat a note that it needed its immunization. You see, my cat had a registry. And I asked the family doctor then, you know, that we had found, whether he knew how many women in his practice over 55 had or not had a breast exam, because, you know, with a cat named Data, I kind of like Data, and he said, you know, I don't know how many women are in my practice, right? Let alone how many need a breast exam, because I don't have a registry, right? I see patients when they come into my office, and I address their problem, and that's pretty much the way the delivery system works. You know, fast forward 13 years later, and we are now in a medical home. My wife was notified that she needed a breast exam. Unfortunately, it was positive. But it was caught at an early enough point in time that her prognosis is absolutely excellent. And I asked my wife, you know, would you have gotten that screening exam if you hadn't have been reminded? And like most human beings, she said probably not, right? I mean, you know, that's the simplest level that I'm talking about, right? That is about thinking about managing a population as a life-saving event. So fast forward about 7 years, and a number of the large companies that used to meet in Washington and have regular meetings around various topics, IBM led a conversation with a large number of them. In fact, there's a number of them that are here in the room today that were part of that original conversation. And I'm going to mention your name and stand up if you're here. American Express, Dow, Disney, Ford, General Motors, Procter & Gamble, the U.S. Department of Defense, and TRICARE, right? So stand up, you guys, I mean, if you're here. Exxon, BP, Boeing, Caterpillar, Phillips, DuPont, General Mills, Honeywell, Lockheed, Walgreens. So, I mean, this is really about a team effort. Really. I mean, you know, so we got together with some of the leaders in primary care, and we asked for a change of covenant. We said, how can we begin to think about a conversation that's quite different? How can we think about using primary care in a proactive rather than a reactive way? How can we really begin to think about first dollar for primary care, investing in primary care, but making it proactive and making it accountable to data? And it was fascinating because the House of Primary Care had reached the same conclusion. How many here are family medicine? Stand up. So family medicine had already reached the conclusion in a Future of Family Medicine study that they did in 2003 that, you know, they had to manage a population, right? And so they were extremely receptive to the idea. The internists here, the internist had done a similar thing. They called it advanced medical home. The pediatricians said, really, the pediatricians said, you know, we've been talking about this for 30 years. We call it a medical home. Nobody's ever listened to us, right? So we, the large corporations, said to the House of Primary Care, please give us a set of principles upon which we can all agree around this transformation away from an episodic care to managing a population in a proactive way. So that was born, the joint principles of the medical home. They're owned by the primary care organizations, and they're broadly accepted. They're now the standard of care in the military, the Veterans Administration. Australia just announced it in Parliament last week. So they're very broadly accepted, but they're immensely powerful. They're immensely powerful because they're built on the principles that we all know in occupational medicine, right? There are principles. I mean, we're the guys that understand how to manage a population. I mean, that's the cool part about it. It's finally like coming around, right? So we took those principles, and again, the large corporations met in Washington. Again, many of you are in the room. And we pulled into the conversation all the national health care plans. And we said to the national health care plans, we want you to do pilots on this concept. And by the way, if you don't, you know, we're not going to do business with you next year, right? Because we're the buyers. The biggest buyer in the room that day was the Office of Personnel Management. TRICARE was another large buyer. But many in this audience had representatives in that room that day around this very conversation. So you're part of this conversation. That was about 5 years ago. These are the results of the pilots, you guys. It's a no-brainer. I mean, you can actually manage a population. I mean, you know, ambulatory sensitive conditions can actually be managed in an ambulatory environment. We've known that in occupational medicine. We've done that in work comp. You know, we understand that principle. But if you begin to think about changing how you buy and begin to demand that the buy is proactive and that you're managing a population and you're not just doing an episode of care where you're defining yourself as the value proposition is we do the best heart surgery no matter whether it's needed or not, you know, you begin to get at this kind of data. So Michigan, I just added this number. Michigan is probably the largest of the pilots. They have now 80 of 83 counties. I think somewhere like 80% of the docs are in this journey, and they're consistent with what we saw earlier, a 32% drop in fact, it's hospital days, 36% drop in hospital days. It's now 28% across the Michigan pilot. It's very exciting, very interesting data. So I visited a a medical home in Riverside, California, that is now delivering 87% of the things that should be done in the delivery system actually being done. Remember the Institute of Medicine study where they said 50-some%, is the most we can get? Lancet then did a study saying, given the current delivery system, the most we can ever achieve is maybe 70, right? So, you begin to use data, you begin to use a registry, you begin to manage a population, and we're now, we're now reaching 90% of the screens that should be screened, the stuff that shouldn't be done, not being done. And in that delivery system, right, we are literally seeing 1 less third need to do heart surgery, right? Again, it's not rocket science. It's ABCs, aspirin, blood pressure, cholesterol. It's managing a population. By the way, in that population and in similar populations that manage care, we are seeing a 60% reduction in the complication of our diabetics. That's 60% less amputations. That's 60% less folks going on renal dialysis. That's 60% less blindness, right? I mean, that makes a huge difference, not only for cost, but certainly it would have for Zsa Zsa Gabor, right? It would have left her with a leg to stand on. So these are some of the early results from one of the large healthcare plans. They declared on January of last year that in all 14 of their markets they were going to be going ahead with this as being their standard of care. After seeing these results, which was published in Health Affairs, again, we have many such pilots that have gone on now. I think probably every week there are 2 or 3 that are published, including some in our journal, which are very exciting. So there are 3 things that are driving this. They're inevitable, they're global, they don't have a lot to do with the current healthcare reform because the driving trends are there anyway. The first is unsustainable cost. This is global as well. It's just that we've already fallen off the cliff in this country. We are dead last at twice the price of any developing economy. This particular graph comes from Health Affairs. It's from October of last year. And it looks at an indicator of 15 years of life lived after the age of 40. So it eliminates infant mortality, some of the confounding stuff, and it begins to look at the real value of the delivery system. And you can see there that, we are dead last and we're getting worse compared to other developed economies. However, if you look down towards Switzerland, you'll see that there's huge variation across the United States in that Ogden, Utah, and Dubuque, Iowa, and a few other places look more like Switzerland than they do much of the rest of the United States. I can tell you right now that there is not a month that goes by where some large corporate entity doesn't call me and ask me the question, where should we put our jobs? Why? Because unsustainable cost, right? The point of pain for all of us in industry has reached such a height that, we now look at issues like this where before it used to kind of fly under the radar scope, right? This is one of the major driving factors. The second thing that's driving this is data. You see, we tried to do some of this a few years ago. We weren't as successful as we hoped to, although there are organizations still around that do a pretty good job of managing a population from that era, but we just didn't have the data to do it. We're still primitive in getting at the data, but tools like Watson, which sort through 300,000 pages of information, 3 million pages of information in 0.3 microseconds and deliver it to the point of care and learns from it, by the way, it's cognitive, are going to do for the doctor's minds what X-ray's done for their vision, right? It's going to really allow you to have some clarity around data. And the third thing that's driving this is a vast change in how we communicate. It was great to see that we have a mobile app on our phone now for our college. My kids, who are 31 or 32 and 27, have never seen a teller at a bank. They never will, right? So we had a technology that allowed us to communicate with our patients much more effectively that evolved at the beginning of the last century. That was the automobile. First of all, We had them as doctors, and we could drive to our patients, and then our patients got them, and we stopped driving to them, and we made them drive to us. But we're still trapped in that environment where we see the whites of their eyes, and we get paid for doing that, right? I can tell you there's places in the world now where over half of the encounters are asynchronous. In Denmark, it's 82%. At Kaiser, it's over 50%. We're beginning to see a vastly different mechanism of communicating. I had a call from an employee in the Washington, D.C. area a few weeks ago. They said, I want to see my primary care doctor, but I can't get in for 2 weeks. And I said, well, you need a new primary care doctor. You know, here's a medical home in your community. From the parking lot, she called me. She was so excited, and she said, my lab results are on my iPhone in the parking lot, right? Vastly different mechanism of communication is coming online, and it's coming online fast, and our younger generation is really gravitating to that. All kinds of mechanisms that we can monitor and sense with this, right? All kinds of mechanisms. So again, in the Danish system, if you take your pills for your diabetes, it's Wi-Fi, right? It's Bluetoothed into your cell phone, and that gets to your doctor's office so they know whether you took your medicine or not. But there's hundreds of mechanisms that now are moving it. So the three things that are driving this: unsustainable cost, data, and communication development that's driven, by the way, everything else in every other industry. The reason why we're last in healthcare is because the human dilemma is very complicated. It's going to take a massive shift in how we handle data in order for us to join the rest of the world in how we deliver care. Again, away from an episode of care towards managing a population. So the model that we grew up with, that I went to medical school with, that was existed in my first meeting where I attended one of these meetings, is the Flexner model. It's a master builder model. You know, we built cathedrals that way in the Middle Ages. We don't build skyscrapers that way any longer. The younger students, right, our medical students today, our residents today, are no longer going to have to be data storage repository units, because that's how we work in healthcare. We take data, we take a bright student, we put them in medical school, we fill them up with data, and when the data gets too complex, we further subspecialize so that we can store that data in human repositories, and then we put it out at the building site, right? So the cathedral, in this case, it's the human being, and we regurgitate that data out, and we build from that data stored in a human being. We don't build a skyscraper that way anymore. And we're not going to deliver health care that way any longer. There's going to be a huge shift in the way we care. It's going to be post-Flexner. We can actually actuate what Flexner had in his mind in the scientific method, because we, for the first time, are going to be getting at the data to do that with. Does that make sense to everybody? It's an exciting world that we're moving into, because there are not many generations that get to see this kind of a shift in how care is delivered. So away from an episode of care with the doctor being at the center of that, towards a parallel team flow model like everything else that's done in engineering, right? Again, if you're building a skyscraper, you've got a team member that understands the tensile strength of steel. You know, in healthcare, you need to have a team member that understands behavior, right? That understands that the head and the body are connected, that begins to understand how to manage medication, right? That needs to come together in some sort of data-driven model, right? So the foundation, the functional element, the very core of that is the medical home. It's the place in the delivery system where data flows and is held accountable at the level that reaches the individual human being. Why is that so important? It's so important because we as physicians are incredibly lucky in that we are the second most trusted element in society. Only families are more trusted than we are because our brains are built that way, you see? I mean, we all know we're going to get sick. We all know we're going to die. We all look for, since the time of the Mother Goddess, a relationship with a healer because we know that that's important to us. Why would I want to disintermediate that, right? Why would I want to continue to have a delivery system that has 5 partialists all doing part of care, none of it being coordinated, none of it being integrated, none of it being, and by the way, disintermediating that basic human relationship of the healer? So in this transformation, we're going to be moving to no longer data stored in somebody's head, but it's going to be data that's stored like every other industry has moved, banking or building or transportation. It's going to be stored, in technology. Every patient will eventually have a plan. Look, my cat had a plan, right? I mean, it was data-driven for data, right? It's going to be team-based. No longer is it going to be physician-centric, it's going to be patient-centric, and there's going to be a team that we're going to have to work with. We're going to have to be much more like engineers, and we understand that in occupational medicine, right? We're going to have to be much more like engineers in managing a population down to the individual level. So if the three things are driving this, three things have to change. So practice has to change towards superb access to care, towards managing a population, towards, actually having registry and using it, towards team-based care. I mean, that's a huge shift in how care is delivered, right? But it's happening. It's happening very rapidly, and it's happening all around the world. Payment has to change. So if you continue to transform a practice, but you continue to pay the doctor to do an episode of care, right? If that primary care doctor is not paid to have the registry, if that doesn't make sense for them to notify you, if you continue to pay them only for an episode of care, this isn't going to be sustainable. So part of this journey is beginning to identify how you begin to put payment reform in place. This is happening all over the world. So in its simplest form, think about it as having more than one dial. If you only have one dial, that one dial is fee for service. You can just, you can dial that up or dial that down, but you only have one dial. If you put in place a dial that actually focuses on how well you deliver the service, right? I mean, in the Danish system, 1/3 of the payment is how well you deliver service. So primary care doc gets 5 times as much money if they answer their email in 20 minutes than they answer in 24 hours. I mean, that gets pretty good response, right? So begin to think about the kinds of things that you want to deliver and pay for that, and stop paying for episodes of care. Particularly stop paying for only episodes of care when those episodes of care might not be necessary, right? But at the same time, there might continue to be episodes of care that you want to pay for, right? So in the Danish system and in parts of the United States now, we begin to identify those services that you want done at primary care, those services you want done in occupational medicine, pay fee for service for that so that it doesn't go upstream, right? So payment redesign is the second element. And the third, and this is really important, you guys, because you need all three legs of the stool. The third is benefit redesign. I mean, if I continue to pay, design my benefits around a $20 copay, and that's the only incentive I have in driving change from the standpoint of the patient, I'm not very far either, right? So begin to think about putting in place mechanisms by which you think about how you manage a population. There's this wonderful paper that came out in the current issue of our journal, done by Rob Lutke and his folks, his co-authors, and it talks about the association of reducing risk factors, right? I mean, think about how you begin to design a benefit that focuses on how you keep your well, how you reduce risk factors in your chronic. What sort of mechanism do you put in place? First dollar for primary care, different costs for benefits if you actually exercise with a mechanism that monitors it. I mean, there's many ways you can think about that. But again, if you only have a $20 co-deductible and you were providing your employer an automobile, there would be an awful lot of Mercedes that were picked up. And by the way, if there was no incentive at all to keep that Mercedes from needing a new engine, there wouldn't be a lot of oil changed, right? So begin to think about how we need to redefine benefits. So again, the three things that really need to fundamentally change are practices and how they practice, payment and how it's paid, and benefit and how it's designed. And many of us in this room are part of systems that are buyers of care. And we need to begin to think about demanding that kind of change. So one of the places that I'm really proud of and I like to talk about is Vermont. IBM happens to be one of the largest employers there. And so, I mean, it's really exciting what they've done. They've taken the medical home model. They've implemented it in most of their communities. We're beginning to see some results of that. But they took this one step further. They began to understand what was written in this article in the current journal, that, you know, you need to wrap around this something beyond sick care. You need to wrap around this a plan that goes deeper than the sick care delivery system. You need to wrap around it wellness and health and other factors. So they set up a community care coordinator program where 1.9 cents out of every sick care dollar pays for these community coordinators. They sit right in the primary care doctor's office, right? These community coordinators pull together the police department, the mayor's office, the churches, Goodwill Industries, the not-for-profits in the community, and they begin to ask themselves some fundamental questions around how do you focus on every patient in that community having a plan, right? What they discovered was there was an awful lot of folks that were ending up in the police department who actually had mental health issues, right? Who nobody was addressing, right? I mean, the question that I want you to think about, because I think it's really profound and important, was asked to me last week by the Minister of Health of Denmark, and that was the bombers in Boston, who was their doctor? Who was accountable? Who was thinking about prevention? Our delivery system in Boston, they made a whole lot of money on responding to those 158 injuries, 13 of them amputations. Who was thinking about at the community level that, right? So we have a lot of allies in this journey. One of the largest is the largest employer in the United States, the Office of Personnel Management. This is their carrier letter from this year. This is the third year they've had such a carrier letter. This is the bang up against the healthcare plans asking for a change of covenant. By the way, many employers are taking this information, putting it in their own RFP, using it to bang up against the healthcare plans as well, because why not, right? You've got a $49 billion book of business. Why not ride on it, right? This, by the way, colors and flavors the ACA under Section 2334, because as you know, the multi-state plan, the two plans that the feds are going to run, and that's going to be out in many states, is colored by how OPM buys their care, because the federal government only has OPM as an example of where it buys its care out against the delivery system the way we, the companies, buy. Does that make sense to all of you? So this is flavoring what's going to happen in the exchanges. This is why OPM is pushing so hard on this. So in response to the results of the pilots, in response to the carrier letter from OPM, in response to the conversation from us the employers, Blue Cross Blue Shield has announced in a meeting that I was in late last year that they were rolling out medical home in every state and Puerto Rico except for Alaska. And most of the other national plans are doing similar. United announced some results that were very promising in their internal publication in December of last year. Humana has many pilots. Aetna has many pilots. Cigna has many pilots. Kaiser's on board. And then the small community health care plans like Martins Point in Maine, CDPHP in Albany, all of them have published papers, very similar results to the ones I showed you. The Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration is a very interesting example. This is a fascinating slide to me. The red line starts at about 9/11, when we took our military resources that used to focus on health care internally, providing care, and we deployed that. And you see that line that goes up straight to God into the sky there. That's the escalation cost of the Department of Defense trying to buy its care the way we buy our care in the DoD Medicare system, as they call it. The bottom line, by the way, is the Veterans Administration and their system and their trend line. By the way, it's stayed below Consumer Price Index. And if you survey your employees, you'll find that the veterans are the happiest of anybody in the care that they get now. It's a huge shift away. So the Department of Defense had an executive order ordering that every military member will have a medical home. There's some untold consequences of that, because some of the occupational medicine programs that we've had in place and we're working like medical homes already, like aerospace medicine and others, may be impacted by that. But it's a fascinating journey. So my son, who's 32, is currently an officer in the U.S. Army. He's in the infantry. He's serving in Afghanistan. He has a medical home, right? And my son and the many like him cannot afford not to have a medical home. They can't afford not to have somebody managing them when they're exposed to post-traumatic stress disorder and all the things that they're exposed to. They can't allow to be able to slip through the cracks, right? I mean, it's fascinating. I went to Edwards Air Force Base not too long ago, one of the earliest medical homes in the military, and I began asking the officers, because I ask everybody questions everywhere, do you know the name of the doctor of your airman, right? And they all knew. Huge shift in thought. Right? Again, who was the bomber's doctor, right? Who's accountable? Where does accountability begin? So the Department of Defense, the one center at the top, is now being built in or near almost every military site on base. They have access 24/7. They have, a system of a registry. It's quite an interesting journey. This particular community has 2 hospitals in it. Those hospitals were, until about a year ago, receiving 17 to 18% of their volume of care from TRICARE, and quite literally overnight that's gone away for those hospitals. Why? Because the military is bringing this back in-house. They're beginning to manage more tightly. They're beginning to take a van and send the more complicated procedures to the Veterans Administration Hospital, where they're beginning to focus on that lower trend line and get it out of the civilian sector. It's impacting amazingly. But that same phenomenon is happening in many of your companies around the country, right? I mean, it's a huge shift in how many of you think about managing a population. If you can't buy this level of medical home, let's build a corporate concierge medical home near us or around us. Even hospitals or employers are doing that. I happen to be on the faculty at the University of Utah. We're in our 11th year now of Care by Design, medical home level care, where we've taken the trend line and really driven that trend line down. And then as a hospital, as an employer, gone to Rio Tinto, gone to the state as an employer, and said to them, look, I mean, this is the kind of stuff we can do if you manage a population. And increasingly you're seeing that in your communities. I contend that there's 2 things you can do in this arena in terms of your response to that. You can look at this and you can say, I'm going to continue to manufacture buggy whips until the last buggy whip is bought. Or I can look at these trends and I can say, this is what's happening. For every bottleneck that I can identify, and I can build a bridge around, or I can, blow up that bottleneck, I've just created a multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar business, right? And again, we have the skills, you guys, in our arena, right? It's the skills that this is built on. So this is kind of how medical homes are building out across this country. This is from July of last year. This is just NCQA. This is what it looks like in terms of the journey. Starting with technology, beginning with primary care, beginning to put care managers in place, then moving to ultimately to thinking about an accountable community or an ability to act in an accountable way at a community level or a system. And we hear about accountable care organizations. Do you know what you call an accountable care organization that doesn't have a medical home as its base, right? It's not an ACO, it's a UCO, it's an unaccountable care organization. It has to be, right? There has to be a foundation for all this. So the Danes, I've been the president of ACOEM, the technology under the Danish system now since I started with IBM, and so I spend a lot of time with them. They've gone from 157 hospitals down to the 21 you see on this map. They used to have like 80-some% of folks die in hospital, now 94% die at home, right? And the Danes love it. They're happy. They love it. Ambulatory sensitive conditions can be managed in an ambulatory environment. Much of it monitored at home, remotely, right? 82% of their encounters are now asynchronous. They're about 10 years ahead of us in this journey. The Australians have just announced that they're moving forward with this. They're sending a team over in June to sort of meet with some of the folks that have done it here, and they've already been to Denmark. The European Union just did this report that came out in the March issue of Health Affairs, looking at how medical home could help them. So this has really caught on globally. The patients aren't shortchanged either. There have been 2 Consumer Report articles, one from Minnesota, one from Massachusetts, that looked across all the primary care practices and patient satisfaction, and there was a huge correlation between how much a practice was like a medical home and whether or not the patients were happy. So I really think that, again, I want you to understand this is just the foundation, right? This is just the basic infrastructure in place to begin to move towards population management, right? If you look at Vermont, you begin to have a broader health interface of this. If you think about an accountable medical neighborhood, you begin to think about how this interacts with the hospitals and specialists, is sort of the next level up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Grundy, for the insights, the information, the knowledge, and the vision. At this time, Dr. Grundy will take questions from the audience. Please go to one of the microphones and wait to be recognized. We have a few minutes, and we'll take questions.
Tough ones now.
We got the microphone set up, right?
Hi. About a couple of years ago, I was visiting a town of about 80,000 people in the upper Rocky Mountains, and the local hospital there had bought up 28 out of the 29 medical practices in the neighboring community in order to make sure they got all the referrals. And it was so obvious how the money was flowing. I'm having trouble as I listen to you figuring out what the story is that you say to the people that run those hospitals in those rural areas about why they should cooperate with you at all.
Because we're not going to pay them the same way anymore. You see, they've already got 11% shift in their dial just this year alone towards keeping patients out of the hospital, right? So from CMS, from us, the buyers, I mean, we're the ones to pay. We're stopping to pay that way. I mean, they're going to be held accountable for, hopefully that primary care delivery system that they've acquired will begin to add some value when no longer is the system rewarded for a butt in a bed. Right? I mean, as long as we only reward them for a butt in a bed and that's how we pay for them, then, this won't work, right? That's why payment has to change. That's why payment is changing. So there are 15 pilots that I can count that CMS is doing, many of them with employers around this model, and many of them are pretty positive, but all of them have payments that begin to shift. Away from paying for outcomes, paying for managing a population. There are whole states. The state of North Dakota, the delivery system hasn't been rewarded by any of the payers in fee-for-service upticks. State of Hawaii, the same, in 4 years. Right? So that's happening. It's already happening. It's going to happen in Colorado. Colorado already has a CPCI. They're already part of the Medicare CMMI Comprehensive Primary Care Initiative, which is the Medicare plan. By the way, the largest payer there, Anthem, is shifting away from paying for only a butt in a bed towards managing a population. So that's the part that's going to impact these guys, right? They're not going to be rewarded. All of a sudden, I was at a hospital in Iowa that was building a wing, right? They were putting up, another X number of beds. And I said, you just applied to be a Pioneer ACO. Do you understand that you're going to get one check a year? That's how you're going to be paid. And no longer is a bed going to be a profit center. No longer is a, proton beam thing necessarily going to be a profit center. So it's going to shift. Next question?
Yeah. I'm on the left here. I emigrated from this country to one of the countries with the better results on that chart, called Canada. And Canada's main difference up till recently has been the fact that everything's paid for medically indicated procedures, and so people could get tests even if they didn't have a data management system to send them emails on how to get it. They didn't have impediments to getting it, and the results, I think, are obvious since it's a very similar population that had a very similar healthcare system. That's not my question. That's an observation. My question is that this medical home model, which I want to congratulate you about, it sounds wonderful. Canada is trying to add that to their system in some ways. But when you talk about the military, and I watch the news, and I watch what's going on in politics, the way you describe veteran care and the way it's described in the media seems to be two different things. The media reports that veterans have wait lists of much higher than the erroneous wait lists that we supposedly have in Canada for procedures to get care. And you're describing a system where the medical home is solving all this. Why the dichotomy in what we're getting? Is it just the media isn't getting it out, or is this at such a basic level that it's a wonderful vision, but we're not there yet? And I wonder if you could comment on the challenges of getting there, because we've heard things like this before, and for a number of reasons, a lot of them political, they don't get there.
So you raised a lot of issues. I think the first one I'd like to address is the systems of care that exist. There are really only 4 in the world. We happen to have all of them in this country. The British system is the Lord Beveridge model, which is where the hospitals are owned by the government, run by the government, and that's the National Health Service. The Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense, their internal structure is that model, right? That's the same as the Lord Beveridge model. So the second model of care that we have is for those of us who are over 65, and that's the Medicare model. That's the Canadian model. That's the Douglas model. And the Douglas model is where the government is, taxes are collected and it's paid to the providers, but the government doesn't own the hospitals, right? So that's the Douglas model. That's our over 65 model. And I would contend that's more a matter of funding level than it is whether the system works or not. We have the same model for over 65 here that they do in Canada. The third model is one that emerged in Germany. It's one of the earliest models, and that's the Bismarck model. And that's our employer-based model. That's the model we began to use for our employees around the time of World War II in lieu of labor. And so we have all 3 in this country, right? And so, that's the model. And the reason, and this complicates the issues a lot, because in Denmark it costs 1.3 cents for every sick care dollar to handle the administrative overhead. In this country it's 31 cents out of every dollar, because we try to use all 4 systems, right? The fourth model is what the rest of the world has when you're not a developed economy, and that is if you have money, you have health care, and if you don't, you die, right? So that's the fourth model. So we have all 4 in this country, and it makes it very, very complicated. But I contend, when I look at what the Canadians done and what we've done in Social Security, that the issue in Canada isn't so much that the system doesn't work, it's that it's underfunded. That's what I look at. That's kind of how I size it up. The Veterans Administration, they've really improved from when I was in medical school. In fact, when you survey patients, the veterans are the happiest with the care that they get. Is it underfunded like the British maybe is? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But I think it isn't necessarily that the model is the wrong thing. It's just that we have to kind of decide on some sort of a model maybe. But that's been our problem. Do we have time for one more, or are we running out of time?
We have time for one more question.
So, if I may, I have a question here. And first of all, Dr. Grundy, thank you so much for your inspiring vision and for working to bring the many stakeholders closer in this country towards the patient-centered medical home model. I think that's long overdue. During your speech, you alluded to the bombers, and you talked about accountability, and you asked who the physicians are. Could you explain what you expect to see from that, or what you would have expected in perhaps a better patient-centered medical home model of the outcome, since there's so much we do not know about that incident?
Well, I think all of us have learned in occupational medicine, in our specialty, that if you know your patients and you manage them like we do in work comp, that you can actually begin to be proactive in identifying things. I think that the question that the Minister of Health asked was, do you even begin to think about how you proactively interact? I mean, we talked about the shooter in Arizona was another example. I mean, this is a guy who had some issues, right? And he had a note from his school that said, when you sort out your mental issues, come back with a note from your, provider, and we'll let you back in the school. I mean, the Danes were incensed by that, right? I mean, who's the guy's doctor? I mean, everybody should have somebody that has a plan around them. And look, if we can prevent 1%, 2%, 3% of these things from happening, we've done a good thing. And I think we can do that. I mean, can we prevent all of them from happening? No. I mean, are we 100% accountable? No. But I think if we actually have a community and we have a group of patients who are ours and we're accountable to manage them and we're paid to manage them, it's much more likely that we're going to begin to be proactive in identifying issues, including mental health issues. It's really what I'm thinking about in reference to that.
Thank you, Dr. Grundy. That concludes our questions. Dr. Grundy, on behalf of ACOEM and the Board of Directors, I am pleased to present you with a token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
So because Paul would not be able to fly with this, we've shipped it to his home.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of quick announcements before we adjourn. First of all, Dr. Giotti will be signing books today just outside the ballroom. 3 of his books are available for purchase through ACOEM Member Services. He's a prolific author, and if you already read one of his books at home, stop by anyway, have him sign a card that you can take home with him. Please remember that this afternoon, Preventive Medicine President from the ACPM, Dr. Hallie Faust, is speaking. Please remember to join us on this evening when we have an international armchair session. Please remember to join us on Wednesday for the ACOEM 98th Annual Membership Meeting at 8 a.m. At the breakfast meeting, you'll meet your new ACOEM officers and directors, which will be installed, and the class of 2013 fellows will be inducted. And Dr. Sandy Schneider will deliver the Patterson Lecture. I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you all for attending. This concludes our session.